Hey, welcome everybody to Martinis with Scott, episode 136, a show about winning momentum in life and in business. Welcome. Let's have a drink. Cheers. I know what you're saying. You're saying, Scott, you're late. You're late to the bar. You're shooting this. It's 4 p.m., 4:15 Mountain. It's not going to be up till 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern. You're supposed to be here at 4 p.m. Eastern. I know. And if you subscribe to the show and if you listen to the live touch base today, which we do at 11:45 Mountain, 1:45 Eastern every day for 10-15 minutes, you will know that I told you I was going to be late today. I apologize for that. And the other thing you're saying is that's not a martini. You're right. I'm drinking a Lefroy, a quarter cask today. And one of the reasons for that is that I had a bunch of martinis yesterday. I was up in Calgary at the Sinclair range office. Had an opportunity to go down to Highs, which is a bar lounge that I like there. And damn, those martinis were good. But I may have had my fill of martinis for the week. So I'm going to drink some scotch as we talk. I had to laugh on the daily touch base today. I was discussing, and there was some live, because it's a live stream, there was some chatting going on there. I was really just whining about customer service treatment yesterday from Apple, the Apple store in Calgary, and from the Infinity Auto dealer, and just the terrible customer service and how big companies are using COVID as an excuse to give shitty service to customers instead of doubling down and using a time of crisis to show the character of their brand, right? I mean, you show who you are when there's trouble. You don't show who you are in times that are good. You show your character when times are bad. Same with brands. Opportunity for the brands to step up, make the life of their consumers a little easier, of their customers a little easier instead of harder. Anyways, I almost didn't do the show because I felt like it was just me whining about things that really aren't that important. But I thought there was a good lesson there. Anyways, what amazed me was how many people have called me after I did that live stream this morning. Have come to my office to talk about it. Everybody's pissed off about the experience, not just my experience, but in general over the last year during the pandemic, how companies and businesses have just used this as they believe is an excuse. Everybody, my own mother called me today and said, everybody is using this as an excuse to do worse. And I think that's true. So I really hit a note there. I didn't expect to hit a note. I thought it was just me whining, but it just made me laugh that I had confirmation that that's not the case. I warn you on Martinis with Scott often that I use this Thursday 1 hour drink together as a bit of a thought experiment to bring my, to get my thoughts together, to ask some questions, to kind of, as a bit of a thought experiment. And sometimes I'm crisp, sometimes I'm concise, and I really know what I want to say. And sometimes I'm just kind of rambling through and thinking out loud in front of you, inviting you on that journey, asking you to send me comments and questions. We can explore topics more over time. This episode, I want to talk about truth, and I want to talk about a related topic, which is trust. And it might be a bit rambly. As I walk through it, but bear with me because I have points to make on this. And the start of this comes from a question from a regular listener. Thank you so much for sending this in. I won't drop your name today, but this listener said, reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, I noticed the topic of honesty in a few episodes regarding a golf trip and increased income thereafter, and that you've always earned a decent income by anyone's standard. Do you mind discussing whether that was planned or if the wealth unfolded organically? And I think the idea is was I using the concept of truth as a planned way, in the example that I gave, as a planned way to, increase my income or do better in life. And your thoughts on the law of attraction, in quotes, law of attraction, or meditation, and if that affected the unfolding. So I think there's a lot in that statement, but I'm going to unpack that first and I'll provide some background on my thinking on these things, as uneducated as they are, but just from my perspective. And then I want to move into a couple of more topics on truth as it relates to trust, because at the end of the day, this show is about doing better in life, doing better in business, doing better in life, about creating change and affecting change within an organization, within yourself. And you can't do that without truth, and you can't do that without trust, and you can't have trust without truth. So that's why I think these topics are related. But let's get to the question. So the background for this was years ago, I was on a boys' golf trip. You know how it is. You've got your 8 buddies or 12 buddies or however many buddies you have, and you have an annual golf trip. This is a thing guys do, and or some guys do. And you know, you go away and you play 3 rounds of golf in 2 or 3 or 4 days, and it's mostly about drinking, but you take your golf clubs with you. And I was, I think we were in Fort Lauderdale at the time on that particular course. And I was playing golf, and I'm not a golfer. Here's some background. I play about 5 rounds a year. I typically break 100. I'll shoot 97. If I shoot 94, I'm ecstatic. My goal in golf in life is to break 100 because I figure I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'm not a golfer. I have, at one point in my life, I think 2 or 3 years, I played about 20 rounds a year. I got a handicap down to 14. I think I shot a low of 81 once in my life. It was a bit of a short point and shoot course, but still, I scored an 81. So it's not like I couldn't, but I've never cared to be a golfer, largely because I love riding mountain bikes and doing other summer activities. And you can't do both. You can't play 4 or 5 hours round trip to a golf course and go for a 2-hour mountain bike ride all in the same day. You'd never do anything else with your life. So I chose mountain biking, but I don't want to be embarrassed in golf. Golf is important for business. It's important on many fronts, certainly in my business. And I do enjoy it. I play as I said, my 5 whatever rounds a year, and 3 of them will be on this boys' golf trip that we used to have pre-COVID for years. And so I'm golfing, we're in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm having internal thoughts. This whole truth issue was not about the other people, but if you're a guy, I don't know if girls behave the same way with a golf course, but if you're a guy, you've had some drinks and you're all buddies, and you've been doing this for years, we always joke that, you know, Joe over here, maybe he should just fill out his scorecard in advance because he lies about everything and just cheats. You know, this person takes 4 mulligans, a 9. A mulligan is when you take another, you know, you miss your shot. You're like, ah, damn, I'm going to try that again, right? Like, you can't do that in a real golf, you know. So that's called a mulligan. And you know, you get your putt, you're putting, you get within, you know, 4 feet of the hole, and somebody says, it's a gimme. You don't have to finish that up. When the truth is, if you had to finish that putt, maybe you'd hit it 50% of the time because we suck, right? And so I was wondering to myself, would I be a better golfer if I just told myself the truth? Like, who am I lying to? And by the way, I was never really a liar about my golf in the sense that maybe legit I scored 103, but I was running on my scorecard 97 because of the mulligans, because of the gimmies, whatever. But then I didn't hang out the bar after and go, I shot 97 or I shot 92 today. I'm really happy about that. I was never like that. I never cared about my score. So it wasn't that. I mean, there's all sorts of people that'll score 86 on their scorecard and have really shot 94 or 95 or whatever. And then they go like, yes, I shot 86. And then just kind of roll your eyes. And I don't think I've ever been like that. I hope I've never been like that. But I was thinking to myself, wonder how much I cheat. Like, I don't mean to cheat, but I wonder how much just through these habits I cheat. I wonder what would happen if I just didn't cheat. And if I was just relentless about my scorekeeping. And I don't mean being a jerk about it or being stuck up about it. I don't mean like if my ball was stuck in a divot or something and I didn't, you know, just improve my lie because I couldn't possibly ever hit it out of the lie that it was in. You know, I wasn't trying to play tour rules, strict rules of golf, but just be just be a lot more truthful, be a lot more honest about my own scorekeeping, just for me. So no, it wasn't a purposeful thing. I wasn't trying to convince anybody else of anything. I honestly don't even know why. I'm trying to come up with the reason why I was thinking this, but I just remember thinking around, just thinking, hey, I wonder what happened. I wonder if I really shoot 110 and I don't even know it, right? And so I decided, well, I'm going to try and do this and see what happens, just for the fun of it. So I started keeping a real score. I didn't take gimmies. I didn't take mulligans. When people said, don't worry about it, I worried about it. And I will tell you that the change of my life and my success in my businesses was miraculous. Did I become a better golfer? No, I did not become a better golfer. Did I start scoring worse? Yeah, I started scoring worse because I was counting everything. Maybe, but it wasn't 10 strokes worth. Maybe it was 3 strokes worse. And, maybe I've gotten a little better. Maybe I do still break 100 legit as opposed to 100 not legit now. My golf is fine. I'm not worried about it. But the seepage from that decision on the golf course into that decision in day-to-day interactions, into that decision into my day-to-day business, it just happened. And it happened by itself. And it didn't happen because I was trying to manipulate anybody. It didn't happen because I was trying to, repair some error from the past, because I've always been a relatively truthful person, as much as anybody, or maybe even I would think more than some people or most people. But I don't know that that's true. Let's just say I'm average. Let's just say I'm average. Most people would say an average. I've certainly never had a reputation of not being truthful, right? So let's just say in a good crowd of people, historically, I was average. But then I made this golf decision. I made this golf decision to just kind of seep throughout my life all by itself. And when it did, it was a miraculous change in my business. I don't want to say so much my personal relationships, but in my business, it just exploded. Now, maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe it's a coincidence. But I will tell you that one person that noted my golf behavior on that trip then did business with me. And in that business, it would never come about without tremendous trust. I'm not saying it's because of the golf. Maybe we had the tremendous trust and friendship before that. But it is a fact that we were commenting on the golf scenario, and then that rolled into a business conversation that would never have happened without absolute discretion and trust. And the business decision ended up in me buying a company in partnership with this person rather aggressively frankly, for $1. Did a turnaround, had it fully leveraged, and 4 to 5 years later ended up selling it for millions and millions and millions of dollars, even after we paid back all the debt. And I think for that person, he would admit to you that it changed his life in terms of the cash that he brought in the door and for his family. And for me, I was already fine, but still, it was a really nice score. And it started off the current business plan of Sinclair Range in investing and buying as opposed to consulting to troubled businesses. That was the first major deal. The percentage gain was, thousands of percent on that on a per annum compounded basis. I mean, the returns are incredible, and we've kept that success up since that very first deal. It sprung out of that golf conversation. There's no doubt about that. Now, if you ask the partner who brought the deal in, he wouldn't make that connection, probably. So I'm not trying to tell you that one led to the other. I'm trying to tell you that it hasn't escaped my notice that there was commonality between those events. But I can sure as hell tell you, I didn't do the golf thing to get the business deal. It just happened that way. And it's just kicked off a series of events that have been really, really interesting. And, but it was not a plan. To answer your question, it was not a plan. It was more about me. It was more about inner peace. It was more about curiosity. What would happen if? It was not about lying to myself. It was about holding myself accountable. Maybe I had a hole there that I needed to fill that I'm not thinking about or can't recall. But no, it was not purposeful. It just worked out that way. Another part of your question was the law of attraction, whether that plays a role in this. To me, this law of attraction, first of all, I've never read the book, whatever the book is that brought that concept up. Although I've heard of the law of attraction. Obviously, I Googled it before the show just to make sure I had it right. The Google that I read was, simply put, the law of attraction is the ability to attract into our lives whatever we are focusing on. It is believed that regardless of age, nationality, religious belief, we're all susceptible to the laws which govern the universe, including the law of attraction, which uses the power of the mind to translate whatever is in our thoughts and materialize them into reality. In basic terms, the thoughts turn into things eventually. I don't think my focus on the truth has anything to do with the law of attraction. I think they're entirely different concepts. The law of attraction, I actually don't really believe in any of these laws and the power of positivity and all that sort of stuff. I believe in the opposite of those laws. I believe all of those things are true, including the law of attraction, but for the opposite reason. I don't think that positivity has power for any other reason than positivity is not negativity. It's negativity that kills you. It's not positivity that saves you. It's negativity that kills you, the way I think about it. I don't think it's what you think about, that the law of attraction is that things are going to materialize because you think about them, but they're sure as hell not going to materialize if you don't think about them, right? I mean, it's really that simple. If you're not focusing your time and your energy and your positivity in a certain direction, right, you're not going to attract anything. This show is called Winning Momentum. I mean, winning momentum is the law of attraction. I always say to people, I argue with them about this whole momentum thing. Like, you're working with troubled businesses, they're losing money, they have to be profitable, right? And then things can be better. No, they don't. They don't. You don't have to have that binary change from negative to positive for things to be better. You have to have directional change. You have to be winning every single day a little bit and gaining momentum. Because when you start moving in the right direction, the resources of the universe come to you. People get excited. Wow, look what's going on. Think of any big business turnaround or organizational turnaround you've ever seen. If you're Canadian, think about BlackBerry. I can't think of one off the top of my head in the US for you, or more international, but it's not the accounting net income going from negative to greatly positive, or the stock value going from nothing to a lot. It's not that objective measure that gets people excited. It's the direction, it's the momentum. And when you have the direction and the momentum, you start attracting energy. You start attracting people that want to invest in your company. You start attracting talent in the human resource side. You can bring in better managers. You start attracting banks that want to lend you money. You start attracting better customers. You start attracting better suppliers because of the change of the direction and the momentum you have. Maybe that's law of attraction, right? Maybe that's law of attraction. It's all a concept about energy. I do believe in that entirely. That's why I call the show Winning Momentum. I do believe in positivity. Another element of the law of attraction that I saw is that if you focus on positive thoughts and have goals that you're aimed to achieve, you'll find a way to achieve them with massive action. Positivity to me is everything. But again, it's not everything to attract resources. It's everything, because if you're negative, if you're not positive, you're negative. And if you're negative, you can't do anything. You're paralyzed by fear. You're doubtful. You perceive things differently. I've talked to you before about positivity and the purchase I did of Novani Stainless, a stainless steel sink manufacturer in north of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And it was a very troubled company. I bought it in the middle of the pandemic, June 2020. And if you looked at it objectively, anybody who was, truthful, relentlessly truthful, who didn't have optimism and positivity would look at this and say, wow, they haven't done any accounting in 6 months. Wow, their revenues dropped, like they've lost 60, 70% of their revenue base before COVID hit. Like that was just happening beforehand. They're losing money, of a long history of net losses. They're out of, the banks coming after them, the receivers driving down the highway. There's a lot of negatives that you could look at there. Or you could admit that truth, but still focus on the positives and find a way to get the deal done. If I didn't have positivity, if I had negativity, I wouldn't have done that transaction. Turns out to be a great transaction. But you have this, this episode is about truth and trust, and you just always have that delusional positivity to balance off with the truth and reality. And so positivity to me is not about being delusional. It's about not being negative. But to affect change, you need to acknowledge the truth. We're going to talk about that more later. The third part or fourth part, whatever it was, about your question was meditation. That's my views on the law of attraction. Meditation, to me, that again is a whole other thing. Look, I've never been to therapy. Never thought about going to therapy. But I listen to a lot of psychology, read a lot of psychology books because I think it's interesting. I'm fascinated by persuasion. Persuasion has a lot of psychological science behind it. And what I learned in my listenings and readings about therapy is that the whole point of therapy is not to get advice, but rather is to talk. The reason that you always see the therapist is just listening. How do you feel? Patient talks. Why is that? It's because the act of talking is how people think. People think by talking, by communicating. They don't think by thinking, they think by talking. That's how they organize their thoughts. And therapy, to a large degree, is having somebody to talk to who's willing to listen to you, who doesn't have their own agenda, who isn't arguing back, who is just willing to objectively sit there and listen to you while you organize your thoughts by expressing them out loud. Okay, you work out your problems by talking. That's how people think. Well, meditation, and again, I've meditated a little. I'm not a big meditator, again, but I've listened and read a lot about the science of this. So take it for what it's worth. This is just my perception of the whole thing. Well, meditation is like self-therapy. It's giving yourself somebody to talk to. People think that meditation is silencing your mind, not thinking about anything, and that is actually the opposite of what meditation should be or ought to be, in my view. Meditation is about letting your mind crunch away on whatever it wants to crunch away with, that you're not directing it, you're not forcing it to think about this rather than that. You just let your mind go and let it think. Don't fight it. Don't fight it, just let it think. And then when it's done crunching through all of its problems to its satisfaction, then you find that internal peace, right? You find the stillness that you're looking for in meditation. You don't get the stillness by forcing stillness. You get the stillness by letting your mind just do its thing. Just let it wander, do its thing until it's done, which is why when you start meditating, it's really damn hard because you got a lot of stuff to think about, right? This may be super painful for months, and then it gets easier because your mind has dealt with these issues and these conflicts and these problems it's trying to sort out. For me, I don't meditate, but I will tell you that when I go for a 2-hour solo mountain bike ride on the mountains and come home, my body's exhausted, but my mind is clear, it's refreshed. I've come up with great ideas. I have solved the problems that have been bothering me for a month without even thinking about them, because I'm focusing on riding, but I'm not focusing too hard because it's a skill that I have. And so your mind just kind of wanders and does its thing, so it accomplishes the same thing. As meditation, my best ideas I've ever had come to me in the shower, which is kind of meditative. You just sit there under a hot water stream and, not really worry about anything else. Some of my best ideas have come to me in my sleep. It's funny, I was laughing with my wife the other day that when I dream, I'm usually doing math. That's what I do in my dream. And I don't know how weird that is. I don't know if I should talk to somebody about that, but I will tell you that an example about a month ago is I wasn't understanding the U.S. news complaints from the Democrats about they inherited no plan from the Trump administration for vaccinations. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell does that mean? Like, what's the plan? It's like, you got a bunch of vaccines, you send it to the states, they stick it in people. Where's the planning in that? And in my sleep, for whatever reason, I wasn't trying to do this, but in my sleep, this was obviously bothering me because I mathematically figured out the resources required to give a vaccine in every single state in the union to every man, woman, and child. How many people you would need to do that based on my calculation of the how long it would take to give a jab and then to do the paperwork in between and prep the next patient. And it was a lot. You need a lot of resources. It's going to take a lot of time. And so, that's how my mind works at night. But it just, your mind crunches through the things that it needs to crunch through before you find stillness. That's what I think is the importance of meditation. I think it's really, really important, but I don't think you need to sit there and go, Om. I think you can go for a walk in the woods. I think you can go for a swim. I think you can, just do anything that you find lets your mind be free to do the things that it needs to work on. So, in answer to your question, the truth was not manipulative or a plan or an idea that I had to try and do better. It was simply something I tripped over just as a challenge to myself. And I'm blown away by what that has meant to my life. I don't think that has anything to do with the laws of attraction, but I do think that if you don't have positivity, you're not going to accomplish anything, because if you're not positive, you're negative. And if you're negative, you're sunk. I think meditation is a whole different animal. I don't think it has anything to do with other those things, but I also think it's really, really important because you can't be creative. You can't be creative without a meditative process, and you need creativity to fix your problems. This show is about fixing problems and changing direction. So I hope that answers the question. There was a lot in there. I hope I got it right. Please let me know. Please let me know in the comments. So I want to talk about truth and trust, as I said, and this show is about changing your life. It's about changing your business. It's about affecting change. It's about things not going well and doing better. Let me ask you a question. How? How can you do that? How can you change your business? How can you change your life without telling the truth? Or at least without stopping lying to yourself and to others. You can't affect change until you face up to reality. Jordan Peterson, psychologist, scientist, world famous influencer, whose material I like to steal, is that the right word? I like to listen, understand, and then try to adapt it to organizations, not just individuals. And that's been super effective for me. A quote from him is, if you don't tell the truth, the world falls apart. If you don't tell the truth, the world falls apart. Well, why is that? And the answer is we don't really know. We don't know why the truth is important. Do you know why? Think about it. Why is the truth important? And if you have ideas, I want you to leave them in the comments for me, or find some other way to contact me on LinkedIn or by email. We give out all my information, or just in the YouTube notes so other people can see it. I think the thing is, we don't know. We don't know why the truth is important. It's just in our soul. It's just in our core. As humans, that's what we are. It's a faith. It's a faith that whatever happens is the best if we tell the truth, and if we're totally true, that whatever happens in that situation is the best outcome that could possibly happen in that situation. It's a faith. How do we know that? How do we know that? We know that without truth, there's no trust. There's no trust in human interactions, right? If you're between spouses, parent-child, friend-friend, if there's no trust, there is no functional relationship. If there's no trust between a human and an animal, I have a dog upstairs. I've had dogs my whole life, really. If you don't, as a pet owner, if the pet doesn't trust you to give love, to not be, what's the right word, to not be abusive, if the pet doesn't trust you to feed it on a schedule and to enforce and participate in a routine, the pet just goes nuts. It's skittish, it's scared, it's not open, it's not loving in return, right? There has to be an element of trust between the human and the animal in this case, right? If you have children, do you teach your children to lie? Do you say to your kids, hey, here's a good way to go through life. just lie. Lie to me, maybe lie to your teacher, lie to your friends. Do you say that? Or do you tell them to tell the truth? If you catch your kid in a lie, are you happy or are you mad? Well, most people would say, we support the truth. We try to teach the truth. Well, why? Why is that? It's because you feel like it's the right thing to do. But I don't know. I've never heard anybody tell me why it's the right thing to do. It's just part of who we are. It's part of our core. Do you wake up in the morning regretting that you were truthful? Or do you wake up in the morning regretting about the lie that you told last night? It's in our core. In our core, we know that the truth is good and that the truth will move you from the trouble you're in to where you need to be, from chaos to order. You need to be true. Sam Silverstein, an influencer on Instagram and a Clubhouse buddy of mine these days, who I met a few weeks ago maybe, had on Instagram, I think yesterday, that true character means showing up to tell the truth and make the hard choices when it is tough. True character is showing up, telling the truth, and making the hard choices even when it's tough. And another post he did was that truth is the truth. The rules are the rules. Accountable people tell the truth, period. The truth is really important. It may not get you to where you need to go or where you want to go. Let me put it that way. It may not get you from here to your dreams, but it's going to get you to the best place that you can possibly be. Lying, the whole fake it till you make it, that's not a business plan. That's not a business plan. This show is about doing better. You'll not do better until you stop lying to yourself. You're not going to do better until you stop lying to others. But I think the interesting thing about truth, if we just expand this topic further, is do we as humans even know the truth? Do we know the truth? I mean, what is reality? Do we have a sense of that? And if we look at things differently, if I look at this pair of reading glasses, and I say those are a pair of reading glasses, and they're made by Burberry, and then you look at these pair of reading glasses and you say that's a pen, are you lying? I don't think it's that clear. Let's talk about that some more. A friend of mine put a poem on Instagram yesterday, which was really weird. Not the poem itself, but the fact that he did that. He's a very type A personality, not a lot of softness in him. And he's been on Clubhouse with me, and I think he's found it therapeutic. And now he's writing poetry on Instagram. I had to call him and ask him if he's lost his mind or if he's okay. He seems to be okay. But what he wrote, it was more prose than poetry. He called it, "Are You Sure?" And this was something he wrote as he was trying to deal with a difficult negotiation with a lot of stressful interrelations and complicated matters to deal with. So he wrote, "Are you sure? Are you sure? The space we feel between perception and reality is the gap between understanding a thing and truly knowing it. A bridge anchored in logic at its end and spanned with intuition. Certainty is elusive, so we render an image from a memory of what should be." So after I asked him if he lost his mind or if he was high or drunk, whatever, we started talking about this. And I understood what he was writing, and I 100% agree. You know, truth is subjective. You know, what is the truth? Do we know it? Are we designed to even know reality? And, you know, I've talked before that the human brain is a pattern recognition machine. That's the whole essence of cognitive bias, which is how we work. We don't look at objective facts and then make a decision based on those objective facts. We, as humans, have an end result in mind, an opinion, a bias in mind, and then we seek facts to support that. We ignore facts that do not support that, or if we're really pushed into it, we amend facts that don't support our bias and interpret them in a way that does support our bias. And then if we're really forced into it, faced with the reality that we were wrong, we enter into what's known as cognitive dissonance, which is really your brain kind of blown up, and it physically manifests. You start talking in word salad, like you just go gibberish you don't make any sense. You sort of loop back to the beginning of the argument, and you've seen that a lot. You've seen that a lot in U.S. politics in the last, say, 6 years. It's been really interesting. So I want to talk about 3 things as it relates to truth and trust, because I think it's really important for the idea of winning momentum and doing better in life. And the 3 things are, one is you just need to accept that cognitive bias is a real thing. It's really important. You need to accept the reality that I might see a pair of glasses and you might see a pen, okay? And that doesn't mean you're lying. It does not mean you're lying. It means you really believe that. You could be lying. You could be lying, or you could be telling the truth within your version of reality. And the second thing is that I always talk about persuasion, because if you're going to change your life, if you're going to change your business in particular, you need to persuade those around you. You need to get buy-in. Let's talk about a business. You got a troubled business and you need time to fix it. Well, you need to convince yourself. You need to convince your senior management team. You need to convince your employees. You need to convince your banker. You need to convince your investors. You need to convince your suppliers. You need to convince your customers. You need to convince or persuade all of these people and institutions that this thing is going to get better, that things are going to turn around and they should support you, right? You need to do that. And so persuasion is a really key element of changing your momentum and winning momentum, as is the name of the show. And so what are the keys to persuasion? Well, I'll tell you the first 2 rules. Number 1 is attention, because if nobody's listening to you, you can't persuade them. In the business scenario I just described, you have their attention. That's not going to be an issue. You're a troubled company and you owe the bank money. Well, you have the bank's attention, right? If your employees work for you, you can get their attention. Maybe you can get the customer's attention. Maybe you can't. But for the most part, your supplier is going to pay attention to you. For the most part, you're not going to have an attention deficit from a persuasion perspective in a troubled business or troubled organization, okay? And so the first rule is attention. Someone has to listen to you. The second rule is trust. It's trust, because if you want to persuade somebody to stick with you, to do something different, to believe there's a way, to come along for the ride and believe in your leadership, well, they have to trust you, right? And how do they trust you? Well, the persuasion tool for that, to a large degree, is what I call, and what they call in persuasion business, pace and lead, okay, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But at the end of the day, trust derives from truth, but not objective truth. Truth as the audience sees the truth. And that's the idea of pace and lead. The idea of pace and lead is to empathize and to acknowledge what the perspective of your counterparty is, and to speak their truth, not your truth, to speak their truth. All right. So I always use an example for this, Trump and COVID, right? Because everybody understands that this is not a politics show. You want to talk about your hatred of Trump, go somewhere else. You want to talk about your hatred of COVID, go somewhere else. This is not about this. This is an example where we can talk about an example that everybody is familiar with. And so Trump, when COVID hit, stood up in front of the American people, in front of the world, and what did he say? He said, this is going to be fine. It's not going to be that bad. Everything's going to be cool. We're going to do this quick lockdown. We're going to come back. This is all China's fault, right? Do you remember that whole conversation? And then when he was called on it later, like 6 months later or 9 months later, I think by Bob Woodward, he said, look, I didn't want to scare the American people. I knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't want to scare the American people. So I was trying to send a positive message. Now, in hindsight, that seems really stupid, right? It didn't work out for him at all. But how many times do you see that in business? How many times do you see that in your life where you avoid the truth to put a positive spin on things, right? Don't just blame Trump. How many times do you put a positive spin on things in hope that it works out positive, or just to pump the ball down the road, down the field, so that you can deal with the fallout of this later? right? You see it in politics all the time. You see it in leadership all the time. And it's in a crisis. In a normal times, maybe it's fine. It's time to put a positive spin on things, put a salesman spin on things. But what if it's negative? What if you're in crisis? What if you're in crisis and the entire population in this example is freaked out? They're freaked out organically in the sense that they ought to be freaked out. They're freaked out by the news artificially in the sense that the news is bombarding them 24 hours a day with "we're all going to die" type messages. Whatever's real, whatever's fake, it doesn't matter. The truth of the audience is they're freaked out about this. And then some guy, the president, the leader, stands up in front of them and says, everything's going to be fine. It's all going to be awesome. That's not pacing and leading. That's not acknowledging their truth. Might be your truth. It may not even be a lie. Maybe he really believed that everything was going to be cool and this was going to be no big deal. Maybe the lie was his changed perception 6 months later where he said, I knew that. I just wanted to, not scare people. I've seen so many business people in troubled companies legitimately believe that things are going to be way better tomorrow because the big contract's going to be in, or this is going to happen, or that's going to happen. And you look at them and you just think, these people are just liars. They're just liars. Like, they just don't get reality. But they're not liars. They've convinced themselves this is their reality, okay? It's not your reality. It's not their banker's reality, but it's their reality. What if Trump in the COVID situation had stood up and said, I know that you are worried about this. And I know that people are dying. I know that this is hitting the elderly population, people with comorbidities. I know that the news is projecting 1 million deaths. All of that's true. It might even be worse than that. Here's some other risks that we need to worry about. We have no good solutions. This thing could get different variants. We're just guessing. We're guessing how bad it is. Nobody in the world, the CDC is just making stuff up. The WHO is just making stuff up. We don't have any good information. What are the costs of a lockdown to mental health, to drug abuse, teenage suicide? What are the costs of all that? We have so many risks with this, and we don't have scientific answers today. That's the hard truth of the matter. What if he delivered that message and he said, that's the hard truth of the matter. It's going to be terrible. But here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do to fix this problem. And then laid out an action plan. And the action plan would be, we're going to do, remember this is a year ago, last March 2020, we're going to do a 2-week lockdown. We're going to reevaluate during that. We're going to set up a committee of experts to monitor this. We're gonna do the vaccination, whatever you call that project, to push it through. We're gonna push on therapeutics. I'm gonna have experts bring to you every week the information, like whatever the plan is, right? Whatever the plan is, that's pacing and leading. That's acknowledging first the truth. It's even going farther than you. You believe it's a disaster and we're all gonna die. It's acknowledging that you believe that, and even taking it further to build that trust by acknowledging your truth, okay? That's the concept of pacing and leading, and then providing a solution because you've built that trust, okay? And so obviously that would have been a better message. It's the same when you're a troubled company and you go to your banker. You've been losing money, you go to your bank, what do you say? Do you say to them, look, you guys are wrong. My company is awesome. It's awesome. I know I'm out of money. I know I'm blowing through all my financial covenants, and I know that I'm not making payroll, but I've got these 4 contracts coming in, and it's going to be great. I'm a tremendous leader. So, just bear with us. Just bear with us. Actually, if you could just extend us another $1 million credits to help out, that'd be awesome too. But, send me the check. But things are great, and you're wrong. Things aren't bad. Things are great. How does that go over with the banker? The banker who their version of the truth, their version of reality is that you're on the eve of insolvency and you're not making payroll. If you'd come to them instead and said, here's all the things that are wrong, we're not making payroll, this happened, that happened. The whole idea that I gave you with the Trump COVID idea, if you pace and lead, if you admit their version of the truth, and even better yet, tell them things that they don't know. I have that opportunity as an advisor or a buyer of a troubled business. I always go to the stakeholder that I may be talking to, and I'm like, here's everything you might be thinking. Here's all the stuff you didn't even know about. It's worse than you think. Here's what I'm going to do about it. Here's my plan. I'm not promising it's going to work, but it's a good plan, and we're going to reevaluate it, and we're going to work with you step by step. Come with me on the journey. That's what a leader does, okay? And the way you build that trust, and it doesn't always work, right? It doesn't always work, but the way you build that trust is you acknowledge the truth, but you also acknowledge that the truth is subjective, and that your truth is different from their truth. Quite often, you need to acknowledge their truth, okay? So the truth is a tricky thing, and I wanted to throw that out for you. And here's the third concept with the truth. I just said that trying to build this trust doesn't always work. Well, why is that? It's because this is a new concept. I haven't seen this anywhere, so I'm going to take credit for it. It's because there's a thing like a trust bank. I think of it as a trust bank. Okay, every interaction is about trust. So if I meet you for the first time, we're in a business situation, I meet you, we shake hands, or at least we did back in the day. Now we do an air bump. We have no trust account open between us. Okay, if I start acting trustworthy towards you, I do something, I say I'm going to take you to lunch, I follow up, I take you to lunch, I buy lunch, you start building, I put a little deposit into my trust account with you, right? I send you over a contract for something small, or I deliver something to you, and I make it simple and easy and friction-free. I put a little deposit in my trust bank. I don't cheat on my golf score. I put a little deposit into my trust bank. When I start doing things untrustworthy, didn't return your phone call, lied to you about something, well, those are withdrawals from my trust account with you, right? So I gotta have deposits to my trust account. I can have withdrawals to my trust account. If I have a big balance in my trust account, in the trust bank, and I make a mistake, like glossing over a detail or getting a detail wrong, not a big deal. Not a big deal, because we have a base of trust. I got lots of trust in the trust account, right? In the trust bank with you. Okay, you are in a personal relationship with your partner. You're the guy in this relationship. You go out for a few drinks with the boys. Maybe you skip over a couple of things that you didn't want to tell your wife about. No big deal, but you didn't want to tell your wife about it just because you'd rather not, right? You didn't do anything really wrong, but you don't want to go down that path and have that conversation. Guys do this all the time. You gloss it over. There's lots of trust in the trust account. No big deal. You get caught later. No big deal. No big deal at all. What if you're an overdraft at the trust bank with your partner? You know, I had a friend, I still do have a friend, I don't know where he's in the same situation, but he did some things he shouldn't have done in his marriage, and then he was in the doghouse. He was literally under house arrest. He wasn't allowed to go out at night at all, period. That was a long time ago. I think they've rebuilt that situation. But if he got caught at a little white lie or glossing over something, it would have been the end of the marriage. It would have been the end of the world, because he was in an overdraft. He had a deficit at the trust bank, okay? And so there really is this idea in my mind of built up trust versus a deficit of trust. And so let's apply that to the Trump COVID situation. What was Trump's trust bank account? That's a tongue twister. Trump's trust bank account entering the COVID situation. Well, with Republicans, pretty high, right? Pretty high. There's a lot of trust there. He said what he wanted to do. He tried hard to do the things he said he would do. They always say he was, the president that fulfilled the most promises ever. Was straight up about it from a Republican point of view. I'm not asking you to agree with it. The trust level was pretty high. He had lots of deposits in the trust bank with them. How about with the Democrats? Well, the Democrats had him billed as a liar long before he was president, right? There's fact checkers that have tens of thousands of lies to keep track of daily. There's 24-hour news cycles about lie. They've created hoax. They've manipulated videos to create lies. It doesn't matter if you believe they're true or you believe they're hoaxes or false, but you have to admit, pretty strong overdraft in the trust bank with the Democrats, right? So now you stand up and you say, everything's going to be fine with this pandemic. How do you think they're going to react to that? They're probably not even going to react positively, even if you pace a lead and tell them what they want to hear, because the trust account is in such a deficit. You see this in business all the time in negotiation. If the trust account is in a serious deficit, you could do everything right and still not gain the trust and still not be able to lead. All right. So those are 3 concepts I wanted to throw out for truth and trust, which I think are interrelated. This is a show about winning momentum. It's about changing direction. It's about doing better in business. It's about doing better in life. And for that, particularly where there's counterparties involved, a wife, a child, a friend, in a business organization, you have to have trust to affect change. And for trust, you have to have truth. And for truth, it has to be their truth that you need to focus on, not your truth. 3 concepts. The truth is subjective. That's their truth, your truth. You have to gain trust in persuasion, and that's through pacing and leading, acknowledging and empathizing with their truth. And you have to be self-aware of where you are in the trust bank. If you got a deficit, you're not going to get them on side. And so what do? You need to bring in a third party. You need to bring in somebody else who's at least neutral or through reputation has a bit of a positive trust, has some deposits in the trust bank, who could start trying to bridge that gap for you. Some things to think about on truth and trust. I hope I answered your question, and I hope you enjoyed the thought experiment here and the thinking process. Thank you for listening. This has been Martinis with Scott. I'll see you tomorrow, Friday, on the daily touch base. If you like the channel, if you like the content I'm putting out, please hit subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Check me out on Instagram on Martinis with Scott. If you're on Clubhouse, look me up there. We do a Monday show, 6 p.m. Eastern for an hour with a couple of different moderators. That's been fun. And that's it for me. Thank you for listening.